Good morning everybody, and welcome today to the Arnold's Combine Clinic, and we're here today to talk about the 6888 series. My name is Ryan Lepp. I'm the harvesting product specialist, and I cover parts of Iowa and Minnesota. And today we're going to be talking about this combine, go through some of the productivity tips and to help you with your efficiency of the combine. So going to talk about the feeder house here. You know, what things should I be looking for to get to look at my feeder house? And what I want to look at here is my feeder drum, and that is adjustable. You can have it in the top slot, medium slot, or the bottom slot. And that slot here is on the side, right there. And you can have it, like right now it's in the top slot, and you can have it in the medium or the bottom slot right there. And what I recommend for corn is having it in the top slot, because you don't want to be pinching off any part of this area between the bottom of the drum and the feeder floor. You want to make sure you keep that area open up. Now, if you are running an auger head, then I recommend either running in the medium or the lower slot. And the reason being, when that feeder drum is on the lower position, it is more aggressive. So it's more aggressive in pulling the crop in. And so I particularly say is that if you are running a auger head, to run it either the middle or the lower position. Corn head, if you hook the corn head back up, make sure that you put it in the upper position. And looking at the feeder chain adjustment here, you want to make sure that the chain is not dragging on the feeder floor. You want to make sure, I always use a finger width between the slat and about the middle or halfway up the feeder house, and so about a finger width for chain adjustment there. And that chain adjustment is right here. That's this guy right here. So basically, you see the window right here, and you want to make sure that you can see this washer is within this picture window right there. Now, if you need to tighten it up, obviously you loosen this jam nut up, tighten this nut up on each side, this side as well as the right side, and do them both about the same time, same amount of adjustment on the bolt, on this draw bolt, and adjust it evenly. And that's what I look for. I don't want it too tight of a feeder chain, because then it just adds more wear and tear to the feeder chain. But if you stay pretty close to this window, close to where the washer is, you're going to be in very good shape there. After so many hours on the feeder chain, yes, you may have to tighten that up a little bit more on this jam nut, but that's what you're looking for on the feeder chain adjustment. On the feeder face right here, you can see right here it's got slots on it. And what you're doing there, and what the purpose of this is, to adjust the feeder face plate fore and aft. And there's bolts on each side, and you can adjust that. Basically what I do is I'm adjusting the feeder face for the header angle. And on the corn head, you want to make sure that you have 23 degrees on the deck plate. So with the header down in the cut position, you want to measure using an angle finder and put it on the deck plate, and you want to measure right around 23 degrees. And if you're not, that's where you'll have to adjust this. Now, if you are running a 30-20 auger head, or a 20-20 auger head, or for that matter a 23-88 on a 10-20 head, then you may have to look at your cutter bar angle. If it's a 30-20 auger head, you'll want to be right around that 15 degrees, and that's measured at the back sheet of the header. On a 20-20, you're going to be right around that 17 degrees on the back sheet. On the 10-20, you're going to be right around 10 degrees on the back sheet, and that can be adjusted right there. And that affects our cut height as well as our flotation on the cutter bar. So that is what you're looking for there. As far as hookup on the header, 3 different things here. Here's your latch. This is what you got to do to hook the header to the feeder face, and there is a pin there on the header side. So when this over center latch is used to latch it. Now sometimes, my experience, you may not be able to get that all the way over the pin. You may have to loosen these two nuts up here and slide this bracket over so that you get it over centered, and then tighten these back up, and then you've got a nice solid secure latch. And then you've got your electrical connector right here. So when you plug this into the header, there is a header recognition sensor on the head, and that recognizes and tells the combine what header model is on it, and that lets the electronics know, lets the monitor know. And so when you plug this in, just make sure that you can see there's detent right there. When you plug it in, you want to make sure you get that lined up first, and then plug it in, and then twist this collar to lock it. But make sure that you go straight in so that you're not bending any of the pins. You do that, and then after that is going to be your hydraulic connector right here. And just make sure that this is clean on each one of these tips right there. Make sure they're cleaned off before you engage it. And then that's your hydraulics. So, and then of course you got your PTO drive line right here. And that's it for as hooking up the header to the combine and making the header talk to the combine. And we'll go through in a moment to show you how to do a header height calibration. So here we're going to start and do the header calibration on an 88 series, and this deals with 88 series, 2388s, 2588s, all the way up to the 130 series, the 140 series, and including the new 150 series. So that'd be like your 51, 61, and 7150 series combines. And so we're going to do a header calibration. This is after you hooked up everything on the header, your drive line, your electrical, and your hydraulics. And now we're going to go in and do a header calibration. And what I do on any of these 88 series combines is press and hold the down button. So that feeder house goes all the way down to the very bottom. So you're going to bottom it out, and you're going to hold it for 2 seconds, at least a minimum of 2 seconds. And then after that, now you're going to hit the raise button. And now we're going to raise the feeder house up. And it's going to raise up. It'll come up 3/4 of the way and stop. And then it's going to keep going all the way up, just like that. And that is how we do a header calibration on a mid-range 88 series combine. So one of the things here, we need to make sure that if we are ever working on the cutter bar itself or the corn header and you have the feeder raised up, make sure that you put the safety stand down right here. And this is on all of our feeder houses will have a yellow safety stand right here, and that is going to, you want to make sure, I'll do it right here just so you guys know. Obviously we don't have the feeder all the way up, but you want to put that down in the down position whenever you're working on the header. So lift the feeder up so that it locks into over the cylinder, and that's, just provide extra safety there for that. So also we've got our rock trap right here, this guy right here, and this lever, you push it down. You want to make sure, see there's a little bit of corn falling out for the mice, but just make sure that you do that every morning to drop the rocks out of the rock trap. And then the second point there is make sure that you close it before you begin harvesting. And you'll hit, just make sure of that. Rock trap drive chain here, just make sure that this chain is in good shape. Look at the sprocket, look at the wear on the teeth here, just make sure there's no excessive wear on these teeth, as well as the chain itself. Alright, so we're going through the Pro 600 right here on the 6088, and basically what we're going to talk about is, this is like, all these icons are like a room full of information. So starting out, if I hook the header up, I want to go in the toolbox, and then what I'm going to do here is, you've got several tabs underneath here, and what I like to do is go check to make sure my header is set up correctly. I go to header, and I've got corn. If you're doing corn, you select that, or if I'm doing soybeans, then you select soybeans right there. And then here's where you can put your width of your header right there. So that's where you do that. So you would just push that and then enter header. If I put 30-foot head, then I would put 30-foot head right there. My working width might be only like 28.5 is what we normally would put in there. So that's what I would do. Header type, platform. You can use platform obviously with the soybean head. You'd put platform. If you had a corn head, obviously you're going to put in a row right there. Max working height, that is going to be counting for acres. So if you come to the headland and your working height is 43, let's say in this case, and when I come to the headland and I raise my feeder up, I want to make sure that I'm not counting acres or doing the yield map on the headland. So this is where I would set that. So that is, I can set it right here or right there, wherever my feeder, wherever you want your feeder height to be, so where it's not counting acres. And then you would push that up and push enter, and then that's the number, and that's where you set that. 30-inch rows, or again, if you're doing 20-inch or 22-inch, this is where you would set that. And then if you keep going through in the monitor, you got the combine, you know, GPS. Make sure if you're using GPS, this is where you would set that up. You would select GPS, or if you're using the wheel speed, if you don't have GPS. And you can keep scrolling. There's lots of information underneath here. Again, these are the main operations. If I want to change the volume on the display, here's where I would do it. So I'd go into operator, and then I would go display volume, and then you can select that, just push it, and then see how it gets a little bit softer or a little bit louder, and just push it to where you want, and then push enter. Layout is if you want to see something under your run screen. So your run screen is, I'm going to hit my back, I go to my run screen right there, and let's say that you see each one of these, you got 6 of them right here, and let's say you want to see something different here on one of these screens. And if I want to see something different on my, let's say, run 4, then I go back to Toolbox and I select run 4, and then I can push one of these buttons here, these boxes, and now I can choose, and I use the scroll button here on the side right there, and I can change whatever I want to look at. So if I wanted to look at the grower, I can push the grower, and I'll have the grower listed there, right there. And I can do that with each function. So whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I can change that information as I see it right here. All right, here we're talking on the 6088 combine, and this is going to be a lot of commonality to that we call it the mid-range combine. So this would be a 2388 or 2588 series, the 130 and the 140 series combines. But so a lot of the same principles apply to those models, but we're going to talk about. But this here, you've got your concave. So 100% of your threshing is done right here, and this is where it's all happening. Right here, what we see here is we got the large wire concaves, and this is going to be a typical setup for corn and beans. Obviously, if you're going to be doing wheat or small grains, you're going to have a small wire, which means that this wire is going to be a lot smaller, like 3/16 of an inch diameter. So, and they'll be spaced closer together too. But for corn and soybean setup, this is typically what you would run. And we also have the other option of having round bar concaves, which I'll talk about in a moment. But some of the adjustments that we look for as far as making sure that our concaves are level with the cage and with the rotor. And what we do there is making sure that the distance between the rasp bar and the concave is the same on the front as it is on the back, because you don't want the front being closer versus in the back here it'll be wider. So if you were to draw your concaves all the way tight, you want to make sure that it's completely level as it is in the front as it is in the back here. And if it is off, you can make that adjustment by this draw bolt right here, and that will lower the front part or raise the front part of the concaves. Now what you would see if you're seeing unthreshed, in case of soybeans, some unthreshed pods, you can't get the pods all the way knocked out, it's not doing a good job of threshing, that's one of the areas is what I would look at to make sure that my concaves are level with the rotor. And again, this is where the adjustment is, using this draw bolt you can lower the concave down or up. Now what I do to check that is drop this the middle section of the concave, drop it out, and take it out, and look. And then you can have visual of the rasp bar to the concaves, as well as in the back and the front. So that's how I would check to see that, to make sure that my concaves are level with the rotor. Now, right here is going to be, these bolts right here is our cage vanes, and you can see them in the back side there as well, which are right there. And these cage vanes, they control crop speed. So if I was going to have a hard thresh condition, so I have some, let's say I get in some green soybeans and I have a hard time knocking them out, and I changed my rotor speed, I've changed my concave clearance, and one of the next things I would do is maybe have to change these and put these in the slow position. From the factory, they're set up in the middle position, just like you see right here. So all these vanes right there, right there, right there, right there, right here, and then up front here, these right here, all set in the middle position. Now if I was going to slow them up, what happens is the vanes would be in the up and down position. So they would stand more straight up and down. And that in turn slows the crop speed up, which gives it more time to thresh out. So that's where I would change those, and I would probably change those if you're having issues with getting the beans knocked out of the pod, or if you're in some high yielding corn and you feel like you got some rotor loss. You can slow these vanes down, put them in the more up and down position. So basically you loosen these up, you slide these down, and if you look up here, there's actually 3 bolts for each vane. There's one bolt, there's another bolt, and there's one way in the top there. Those are the 3 bolts you gotta loosen up for each vane. And again, that's what you do to slow the crop speed up if you run into those high yielding corn rotor loss conditions, or if you have issues with knocking the beans out of the green pods. As far as rotor speed, concave clearance, rotor speed, you're going to be in the neighborhood of a starting point of about 380, and concave clearance is going to be right in the neighborhood of at least 25 millimeters, and that would be in your cab indicator up there, and the A post is where you would see that. So that is where I would, a good starting point. And we have a lot of these settings at caseihharvesting.com is where these settings are also can be found at. All right, talking about our residue systems here. And we've got an integrated chopper, meaning that the chopper is placed, right behind the rotor. So everything coming out, the straw coming out of the rotor hits the chopper. Well, underneath the chopper, you've got your stationary knives, and that can be adjusted right here. And so when I put the lever down, it disengages the stationary knives underneath the chopper. When I engage it, I pull it up, and now the knives are engaged. And so this is the position that you would want to use for soybeans. Or if you're doing small grains and you want to chop up the straw, that's what you would do. For corn, you would drop this knife down so that the knives are disengaged, and then on the other side of the combine, you would put the drive belt on the slow speed for corn. And we can show that when we get over there, but that is one of the things. If you're dropping straw, then same thing. You would put the knives in the down position and chopper on low, and then you can drop straw if you want to be out behind the combine. So to change from, if you're going from soybeans to corn and you want to change the chopper speed, obviously this is going to be your chopper drive right here. Okay, so if you want on beans, obviously we put it on the big pulley, which is where it's at right now, and that's going to speed up the chopper. And so that'd be on the drive pulley. So if we're going to switch to corn, then we loosen that handle on this side right here, this guy right here. You loosen it up, and by pulling on the lever, now loosen the belt up, and then you change this belt onto the inner pulley. And then that switches it over to slow speed, which you can then either drop in straw or for corn. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the maintenance here. Obviously, if you look at this combine, and all axial flow combines are very, very simple. You don't see a lot of belts or extra chains, but as far as the daily maintenance go, again, it's very, very limited. However, you see here on this decal here, you can see where some of these daily items can be found at. And in particular, this one right here that points to a 10 hour. So this would be a daily check. And that's be your shaker arm bushing right there, and I'll come over here and point that out, which is this guy right here. So that would be a 10-hour Zerk, and that's been pretty much common for the last so many years on the axial flow combines, on the mid-range combines, on the 88 series, the 130, 140 series, and there's one on each side. So there, and what I would do is probably give them a good 2 to 3 pumps of grease on this particular grease Zerk right there. And some of these other checks here, you've got the drive axle. So those splines, that's a 100-hour. Again, that's probably not an every day, but at least check it once a week. We have the feeder house drive right there to check that. That's a 600-hour one, so again, not a lot. And then you also have your rear axle right here, which is a 100-hour, which if you have a mud hog, that might be a little bit different there, but obviously on the non-mud hog, there's one here on the spindle right there. And then, of course, you've got a 600-hour Zerk on your chopper bearing there as well. Fuel filters, we talked about some of the other maintenance items. Fuel filters, you've got your pre-filter here, the one we are looking at right here, and then also the one up on top at the engine. So you've got 2 main filters there. This is kind of your water fuel separator as well. That needs to be checked. If you're having an issue here, there is a sensor right here. That's something that needs to be checked if you're having fuel related or power problems or something like that. So that is something that needs to be checked. So on this side of the combine, on the right hand side, remember you've got your rotor gearbox here that you can change from 1, 2, and 3 gear. So first gear is going to be for corn, second gear for beans. And then of course if you're doing small grains, wheat, you can have it in third gear. So that changes your speed there. As far as any other maintenance items here, you have your elevator drive, okay? That is something that needs to look at your drive chain itself, look at the sprockets, make sure they're not worn down. You want to look at the actual paddle chain of the elevator, which is underneath this bracket right here, underneath this trap door. Just make sure that you got enough of a wiggle. You don't want it too tight or too loose. So that adjustment obviously is going to be right here at the top of the elevator. Adjusting that bolt will change the tension on the drive elevator paddle chain. So on the clean grain elevator, which is down here, right here you've got the elevator paddle chain, and this is what I'm talking about when you have a wiggle, a little bit of a wiggle there, and you don't want it too tight. This one is pretty good, and if you need to change that, that is done right here. So this bolt, when you turn this bolt here, that changes puts pressure on the elevator head, which puts pressure on the chain. So raising this elevator or this shaft up will tighten the chain, and lowering it down will loosen the chain. This guy right here is your moisture sensor right here. A lot of times this can get plugged up with weeds and moisture, whatever inside. There's a little auger underneath in here. Basically what you do is you pull these 2 pins out, and the elevator, the auger will come out, and clean that out, make sure it's clean and free of any debris, and make sure there's no moisture sitting in there and able to churn. So just make sure that is clean. On the inside of this shield, here's where we talked about earlier about where this grease Zerk is for the shaker arm bearing. So that guy right there. And that, again, that's a 10-hour Zerk right there. Also look at the elevator drive right there. So yeah, it tries the clean grain elevator. Just make sure that chain is in good shape. Make sure there's no rust or anything like that. You know, a lot of times I'll get the question, should I oil the chains up. And while yes, you can oil the chains up, but sometimes that can attract dust and dirt. So then sometimes that can put more wear and tear on the chain. So you don't want to oil the chain too much. Little oil doesn't hurt at all, but just keep an eye on that chain as well. If you want to switch the elevator speed from low to high, that's done back here. And that back here you can see the drive pulley right there, or I should say the sprocket. And basically you can switch that chain on the smaller drive to put it on the high speed. Typically for corn, this elevator will handle about 3,800 bushel an hour is max capacity. And if you are in wet corn condition, then I would switch it over to the high side. And you know, in beans, running on the low side, obviously when you run things slower, it's less wear and tear on the chain, it's less wear and tear on the crop itself. So I try to keep it on the low side as much as possible. But again, if you're running the high side or running in wet corn condition, then run it on the high side. As far as any drives right here, you got your fan drive right here, and that's this guy right here. Sometimes this jack screw can get bound up. Sometimes I've had to loosen this guy up, which is on these nuts right here. Just give it a little bit of a twist with the wrench to loosen it up. Really, this fan will go up to about 1250 RPM, but just make sure that you got a full range. If you don't get a full range, then come down here and just make sure that this jack screw here is not bound up.